Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of American Lineage Podcast. Hi, my name is Wade Francois Edwards, and I'm a member of the Francois family. I am your host today and also aspiring genealogist. Now, today's topic, we're going to talk about the Francois Francis lineage and family branches, from separation to survival, mainly how the branch from your lineage has broken off into many, many families. Of course, we're going to kind of give a quick preview what is a lineage and what is a branch. Well, a family lineage, we said before, is your direct bloodline to your ancestors. And your family branch is going to be, that's a separate group of family members, but yet they're your descendant and they're also part of your ancestors. So with that in mind, we're going to dive into, how the Francois and Francis survived through the different eras. Of course, being an aspiring genealogist, we always look at things in five different categories for the most part. We look at for a time period, we look at what type of records was kept back then. We're going to look at the type of laws that was involved, also the daily living of our ancestors. And finally, we'll look at the social system, what program was put in place to get them from that enslaved area into the 1865 Emancipation Proclamation era. So there, you kind of have it like that. And we're also going to briefly touch up on, because we building and telling the story of my family lineage and branch and how we spread out. We talked about the 12 foundational branch of the Francois lineage and family, the structure of it. And those foundational branches, we said they moved into different parishes. We also briefly talked about the difference between parishes. Louisiana, by being a French and Spanish colony originally, we have parish under French laws and rules. In other part of the country, you have counties. So there you have it from that perspective. But just to list the 12 foundational, because this is very pivotal of how the Francois lineage broke off and moved into different branches to these foundational parishes, starting with Orleans, the West Bank, St. James, St. John the Baptist, St. Charles Parish, Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne Parish, Iberville Parish, Port Coupee Parish, Clackaman, and the Louisiana Diaspora branch. Those are your foundation of the different ways that my family and the Francois lineage and branch had moved throughout the different eras. And the three major eras we speaking about right now, of course, is the colonial era. That's about 1700. That's the French and Spanish rule. Secondly, we're looking at when it was happening, slavery was going on, that period between 1700 up to 1865. And the third era we're looking at, of course, is after emancipation, 1865 to presently mode. So with that in mind, those are your major, eras that we more or less targeting the Francois Francis lineage. And from there, last week I know we briefly talked about the 12 foundational ways also that name Francois and Francis were passed down. And briefly, just to go over that, we'll touch upon it. The number one way was from father to son, of course, mother to daughter, plantation owner. These names passed down that way through adoption. Also, the French had a way of the name spelling. I have, matter of fact, some documentation written in French that I have to get converted or try to get some help on to convert, and that's part of my family lineage and the branches. Also, the name was passed down to free people of color, as I mentioned. That surname, Francois and Francis, it is equivalent. It's interchangeable because if you look at it, In English, it means Francis. In French, it means Francois. German, the Frank, also Portugal, and Spanish, Franciscus. So there you have it. That name, it evolves and it moves in so many different ways because of how Louisiana was colonized through the French, the Spanish. You look at African descent, Caribbean, combination of indigenous. You had native. So all that, history and all those different types of lineage and moving parts makes it a very, very interesting lineage and branch of the Francois and Francis lineage. And from there, another way it was passed down the name through the military registration. Uh, by the way, also they use nicknames, and the name was passed down through guardianship and adoption. So those are just some of the ways that the name was passed down, and also give us an overview, as I mentioned before. Also, likely that Francois, through the 12 foundational uh, parish founders, uh, possibly that name is in all 64 parishes throughout the state of Louisiana. Uh, Most likely it is. That's the type of influence because it's one of the oldest, most stable name. Uh, from the top of my head, I remember just researching and reading that back in the either 1840 or 1860 census, the Francois surname, that name was the most popular name in Louisiana and throughout the United States at one time. And right now, by us having the Great Migration in the 19th century, the Francois and Francis name had moved on to a national platform in all 51 states, and mainly a few states, of course, Texas. We looked at Louisiana, we said Mississippi, California, New York, Virginia, Carolina, Maryland. But currently, right now, there's some type of Francis or Francois surname. It's a surname because that name has a lot of significance. Is in right now the majority part of your the state, the United States. And let's just look at how the Francois and Francis surname and lineage and the family branch was separated. Well, you know, to begin with, even before the United States slavery system expanded, we said, and before, the state was formed, that name was separated, but it was related by cluster because understanding that the lineage itself, and here you had the movement of these 12 parishes, foundational parishes, most of these people moved around uh, after the Emancipation Proclamation. And the reason why they're doing it, for the simple fact, after slavery, for the most part, when that was ended in 1865, most of them wanted to move on to actually a better life. But just before that happened, uh, one of the most impactful and one of the most, how can I say, forcible event that happened when it was forced through separation until they got freed from the Emancipation Proclamation. But now, during the enslavement part of it, you have the plantation system that was going on, and that happened during that time, that era, 1865, and family was actually split up between the slave owner and the different plantation owner. There was domestic slave trade going on, and people actually were sold between the different parishes. The surname could be adopted, so there was a lot of separation going on in the beginning for the Francois and Francis name. But now, afterward, as as time progressed and it ended the fragmentation, which therefore that meant that you had multiple branches across the different plantation and the different parishes. That's part of the separation for the Francois. Still, after 1865, when they got their freedom, uh, a lot of family stayed with their plantation owners. A lot of them, relocated to different parishes in different states. Some of them mainly moved because of economic survival and also to do contract labor, sharecropping, things of that nature. And family split to support each other and also build their community and neighborhood. So, you know, that kind of put a lot of stress on the family. And these are some of the things that the Francois lineage had to overcome: separation. And it also forced branches, meaning that, that name was pretty much in continuity in spite of what all was going on back then. Then we're looking at the Great Migration era. That's the 1900s up until 1940, things of that nature. Some of the branches, they left Louisiana and started moving nationwide, as I mentioned, and into almost like all 51 states. And currently, I was doing some research and reading where it's the Francis right now. You have more their lineage and more their more their branches in throughout the United States compared to it flipped compared to the Francois when originally everything started out through the Francois. But time, through times and eras, things changes. So there you have it. A lot of Francis and Francois throughout the United States, and there was a few other factors that went on during the Great Migration. One of the most detrimental factors was the racial classification. After, of course, the Louisiana Purchase, things of that nature, the country, the state went into a racial classification status, where most of your Black free Creole, that tradition and that culture was suppressed and depressed. Because of that, the system went into a black and white society back then, and a lot of names, culture was changed and erased, altered, all that. But in spite of all that, the Francois Francis lineage, they maintained, particularly on the West Bank, where my ancestors and everything, West Bank of New Orleans, Algiers, Gretna, Marrero, Harvey. My family actually was there in the beginning and developed that whole area per se, historically we speaking. And that's at least 200 years in terms of, historically speaking. But, with that in mind, we had the Catholic Church also help kept things together and survive the Francois family through baptism, through marriage, and through burial. And lastly, and to sum it up, we have one of the most important also, the oral history. That's where before they can actually get their freedom, a lot of tradition was passed down through talking, through conversation, through storytelling. Also, it connected multiple generations by oral storytelling, and that's helped out a great deal and really kept my family lineage tight together. And that's the reason why we're standing today, pretty much. And from there, finally, the Francois family name, it wasn't just separated, but it survived. It survived over century through resilience, through family, family continuity, and through community and neighborhood building in New Orleans and the entire West Bank. And that's since documented, genealogy documented since the early 1800s up until now. So there you have it, a general overview of how the Francois name and lineage survived through separation and built, families and communities and was involved and built an entire section of New Orleans West Bank. And I appreciate, my podcast producer. He's a retired Navy veteran, and he does an extraordinary great job each week helping me with the podcast. And definitely, if you guys, I appreciate you would continue on sending your comments and following us as we grow and help other families to connect, to preserve, to educate, to inspire, to just empower people from all walks of life to learn and find and build upon their family lineage, because it's never too late. You see, it's never too late. And finally, I personally deserve that every child deserves to know where they come from and where they're going and how they got here. So there you have it. I appreciate it, everybody, and looking forward on seeing you guys again next week. And share it with friends, like it, subscribe, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much, and looking forward on speaking with everybody next week. My name is Wade Sr., and have a blessed day. Thank y'all.